There are some times when a browser is just absolutely necessary, and in this video I want to see how much it will slow down my existing Scrapey project by putting Playwright into it. So this is the project that I've got. This is a very simple spider, but pretty effective. We basically pass out the page links and the product links. We use response.followAll, and then we return the item data out from that. Now I've already run this here, and we'll see that I have somewhere in the region of somewhere in the region of, where are we, 1100 requests. Item count is 9060. That's because there is multiple items on a page, so the requests are different. And it took 262 seconds to run. This is fairly typical. This is also going through my proxies as well. So yeah, there you go. So this was pretty straightforward. So what I want to do now is I want to have a look at the documentation for Scrapey Playwright, and we're going to implement this into this project really quickly. We're going to use the base settings to start with, so just what it suggests here. We'll see how well we get on, and we'll run it, and then we'll maybe try and tweak it a little bit to see if we can make it go even quicker than it already is or isn't. So let's find out. So the first thing we need to do is install it. So pip install Scrapey Playwright. I'm going to do that in this shell here. Let's clear this up. Pip install Scrapey Playwright. Should do this nice and quickly. And then Playwright install. I'm going to use Firefox. I've had some issues with my Playwright Chrome installation. This should work fine though. So what I want to do now is I'm going to come to the download handlers. I'm going to copy these. I'm going to come back to my settings file here, and I quickly search for download. Make sure that there's nothing going on here. Middleware's no. Cool. So let's then go to the bottom, and let's put a new section in here called Scrapey Playwright. So we can put all of our Scrapey Playwright settings under here. So the first one is the download handlers that it says we need. We need to make sure we're using the twisted async IO reactor, which we are. This is default in all Scrapey projects now, and it's very good, it's very powerful. And that's all we need to do by the looks of it. Unless explicitly marked, requests will be processed through the regular Scrapey download handler. So we do need to add in the extra meta here. We can see it's right here. It says meta Playwright is true. What I'm going to do though is, before I add that in, I do want to add this in because I want to use Firefox. I think it defaults to Chrome. So let's put this in here. There's one more setting that we need to change. It's mentioned it about user agent here, so we're going to change that. Now, it's worth looking at this if you're trying to do this on Windows. Make sure that you follow this this section here to make sure that it will work, because obviously I don't run Windows, so I don't help you there. I can't really help you there. So I'm going to remove this. In fact, we'll just comment this out, and then we'll create a new one. So if we go back to it, we can just comment the string out rather than having to type it out. So I think it said just use none, so that should work. I'm also going to change the concurrent requests. I'm going to put this back to default. I did run it previously. I think I ran it without that. I'd been messing around with the settings. Okay, so let's go ahead and go back to our spider products. There it is. And we need to add in the meta Scrapey Playwright into our field here. So I'm going to go here and we'll do I think it is, what did it say it was? Playwright is true. True, like this. Okay. And we want to do the same for here, because obviously we're doing making requests here. Now I don't actually know if this proxy string in here works with Playwright. We will find out. Otherwise, I believe there is a section on proxies down here. Yeah, see, it's not going to work like that. So what we'll do is we will go ahead and we'll run it without this for the moment. I'm going to remove this section here, and we'll add this in as Playwright suggests later on. So I want to try this now, so I'm going to clear this up. Now I do sometimes have issues with Playwright when I install it into a virtual environment. It sometimes doesn't work. It tells me I need to do Playwright install even though I've already done it. So let's just see where we get to. Okay, we can see it says Scrapey Playwright starting download handler. Now I haven't changed any settings. This is just bog standard. Okay. So we are getting some responses back, but I can't tell. It does look like we're getting items, so that's good. But we'll have a lot of information coming through on the screen. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop this, and I'm actually going to run it again with the output of pwtest.json, and I'm going to run it again just so I can actually pick up and see if those items are coming through, so we can understand, before we actually try and run this properly, that the items we're actually wanting are coming out. So let's just run it for a few more goes. I think I might see some items. Hard to tell, really. There's a lot of information coming back. I believe it's logging out every request response from the browser page, which is probably quite a lot. So I'm going to stop that now, and let's cat out our pwtest.json, and we do have items. So let's go like here, and we'll format this. Great. This is exactly what I wanted. This is exactly what we were expecting to get. Now this should be somewhere around 1100 pages. What do we say, 9,000-ish items? So that's good. I like that. That's worked straight away out of the box, and that's really important. That's one thing that I really like about this package. You can do very little and it will work straight away for you. It's been updated very recently, I believe, or it's constantly being updated, and it's very, very powerful. And it's the thing that I lean to now if I need a browser for rendering, and I want to do it on my machine rather than going out to a third party for that sort of service. So let's go ahead and change some of the settings now. So we already had this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the Playwright launch settings, and what this is going to do is it's going to let me go back to our settings. I should have this in my buffer settings down to the bottom. So now I've got this. What we can do is we can change headless from false to true. I often don't, I know it worked then, but I often don't have an awful lot of success running as headless. Headless is false. Sorry, I already had that setting because default is true, so they've changed it to false. I'm also going to up the timeout a little bit. I'm going to change it to 60 because we are going to go ahead and put proxies in this in just a second. You can actually connect with via CDP, Chrome Development Tools. I've done this before, but it's not something I've ever really used that much. Context, we're going to come back to contexts in just a minute, and the max contexts. So let's go down. Should be fine. This one is an interesting one too. I just want to touch on this before I go back and start running it, is that we really want to cut down on the stuff that we load up on the page, because obviously it takes longer and uses up more of our data. But this wasn't that successful for me on this specific site, so I want to do more testing with that. I found that if you try and abort loading of the images from this site through my testing, I actually come into a few errors. So I'm going to ignore that for the moment. And I think we don't need to worry about anything else here. I'm going to go ahead. We don't need to worry about the page. Okay, so let's come back to our project. It's the second time I've done that key binding wrong. Let's save it. And now let's clear and run it again. I'm going to remove my test file. And then let's run it again. And we should get the browser pop up and open on the screen now. And I quite like this. Is quite interesting because you can really see what's going on and how many browsers instances it is running and what pages it's loading up. We can see that we're already going through product pages here. One closes and a couple more open. I think we ended up with, did we end up with 8 there or 6? I think that was 8 or 6, and I think that's the default. So we can see that's all loading up. And we could, of course, actually do something on these pages each time if we wanted to. I don't often do a lot of that, although it's good to know that it's available. You can either scroll or interact with the page in some way. But if you're trying to scroll because you're looking to get extra items from infinite scroll, there's often a better way, and that's utilizing the API reverse engineering it. So there'll be a video link up here somewhere for you to check that method out if you want to. But when it comes to actually loading up the page to be able to click on something to do something or action something else on the page, then running it through a Playwright browser like this is it's essential, basically. So this is pretty good. I'm very pleased that with the way this is working now. We can see the pages are all loading up, they're disappearing, it's handling it. I don't think my system's taking, my microphone's just in the way. I think I'm at 42%, 43%. I think that's CPU or RAM. I can't remember which one it is. Either way, I don't have a massive powerful system, but it's handling it just fine. So this is pretty decent. So I'm going to stop this now, and we're going to go back and see how many items we had. So that was 1,058, and we're looking for 9,000 in total. So all in all, so far, that's pretty good. And you can see how quick that was compared to, you know, just your standard sort of like one at a time browser. And we didn't have to do anything to get it to run multiple browsers. We just installed it and ran, which is really cool. So let's come out of this. Remove that file again. Let's clear this up. So we do need to start thinking about proxies, because if I was to run that more often or let it keep on going through my native residential IP, although obviously I have, you know, high value IP because it's my real one, it will end up getting blocked, and you probably get blocked sooner rather than later. So we want to go back over here and we want to come to the proxy part. Now I do believe if I search this page, proxy, there was, we can put them directly into the request, or we can run launch options with the proxy. Yes, so we want to go to this and we want to put them under the Playwright launch options under the proxy like this. Okay, so that's what I'm going to do. So we already have these launch options here. So I'm going to go ahead and paste these in here and format that nicely. So I'm going to go ahead and get my proxy information. I'm going to do that on a different screen just because, you know, I don't want you to use my data basically. Okay, so that's done. I'll either blur that out or just change my password. Either way, don't try it, it won't work. Okay, so let's go ahead and, did I remove that file? I did. So let's try running it again now and we'll see if it still works, and we should be going then through our proxy, which obviously is going to mean that we can crawl more and more often. Yeah, I think it's 8. Cool. So we are getting some errors here. Okay, so I've done something wrong. I've missed the number of the port, should be 6060. That's why it was doing that, because I couldn't go anywhere. So now this should work now. It's obviously a bit slower going through the proxy than my IP, but you know, if it means that it does actually work and we don't get IP banned straight away, it's worth it. So now this is working. I'm going to stop this before we actually run it the whole way through, because I can see that this is working. So now I want to check out the contexts. So if I come back over here and we look at context. So Playwright contexts. So we can actually define different contexts. And if we have a look here in browser contexts, and then I think this is the Playwright link. Okay, that didn't take me to where I wanted it to. So let's look up contexts in here, browser context. So it's basically provides a way to operate multiple independent browser sessions. So we can actually say we can have multiple browser contexts for the different parts of the site that we're going to, or different like different style of links, I suppose, is the right answer. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this and we're going to come and put this underneath here. And I'm just going to comment these out because I don't think we need them, and we don't need persistent. In fact, we can probably just remove this. I'll just comment it out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to call one of these products, and one of these can be search. So I'm creating 2 separate contexts. So when we come to our spider, we can actually say under this one where it returns the search page, I can do, if I just go back to the thing here, how did we put this into the meta? I'm just going to remember. Playwright underscore context. So we can put this in here, and I can say for this one we want to use the context of search. I think that's what I called it. Search and products, yes. And then under this one, which is going to go back to the pass item and the products page, I can do Playwright context is to products. So it's going to use those contexts there. So let's try running this again. And we should see down here, now we have launching 2 startup contexts where we have different browser contexts that are going to be useful. One's for the search pages and one's going to be for the product pages. This just gives us a little bit more control over what happens in which part of the browser. So you can see that one stayed on the search page, I think, for a bit before it was superseded. So it does work. So the other thing that we can do now with access to the contexts is we can, let's go back to our settings. We have this option of how many contexts do we want to run. And I've had mixed results with this. So let me go back to max contexts. So we are only specifying 2, but we're going to let no limit here. But what we're going to change is this one. Let me go back to it. It's max pages per context. So if I change this to 2, I think what this means is we're going to see less browsers opened up because we have our contexts, but we're only allowing 2 per context. So we should have, I think in theory, yeah, so you can see we've got 2 for the products, and I think this is the search page, which is obviously loading up 1 page at a time. So it's not quite going as quickly. So we can tweak this setting now to be able to scrape faster or slower depending on the context, the number of contexts we are using, the number of pages per context. I've said context so many times. Right, so let's put this at 10 and let's see what happens. In fact, I think when I did this before, I had quite a lot of issues. So let's see what happens when we have it at 10 pages per context. We'll see how many we get. Okay, so we still only have, I think, 8 browsers loaded up here. So I wonder if we've hit a limit on either processor cores maybe or something, or maybe there's a limit of how many contexts, how many pages we can have per context. But the idea being that you can use these settings to control how many browser pages you open per context, and you can have different contexts per different part of the site you're going to. So if you were trying to scrape, if you were going through categories and products and search pages, you could have a browser context for each one, and you could say how many pages you wanted to load per that one. Obviously, you're going to hit a hardware limit, I believe, at some point, which I think may be what we're hitting here. I'm not entirely sure. So I'm going to turn this back down. In fact, I'm just going to comment this back out, and we're going to let the system decide. And I'm going to leave this running as head full. Let's try it as headless. I think this is going to have, this might fail now. And this is an issue that you get quite often when you're trying to use headless browsing, is that it's spotted and determined very, very quickly. Yeah, see with 407s, it's understanding very quickly that we are a headless browser and it's going to reject our responses. In fact, it isn't. However, that's interesting. But it's working in this case. My point was, I thought that wasn't going to work. My point was that quite often I've found that if you run headless, especially if you don't run something like Playwright Stealth, where it tries to remove those flags, there is an obvious giveaway that is sent or can be found by the website that knows that you're running a headless browser, as in completely headless. So anyway, I'm going to leave this as false. I'm going to leave most of the rest of the settings as default, but I'm going to keep my 2 separate contexts, and I'm going to go ahead and run this now in its entirety. Let's remove this file, and we're going to run it in its entirety, and we'll see how long it took versus running it in standard. So let's go ahead and do that. Okay, so it's successfully finished, and there's a few things that I want to look at and point out and suggest possibly a couple of reasons for them. So the first one here is that the Playwright one, which I need to open here, it took 1270 seconds over, the standard version, which only took 262. So, that's kind of like, what's that, 5-6 times slower? I don't think that's bad, considering we were loading up multiple browsers, we were using a lot more memory, and obviously, loading up a lot more things. Somewhere around here it will tell us the response bytes, which is this many, which I believe, I'm going to have to look that up and find out how many that is. It's yes, so that was about a gigabyte. Whereas over here, if we look at this, this would be 175 megabytes. Yeah, so this is a lot more heavy on the data usage, which would become an issue when you're using your proxies, because obviously you need to the data will cost you. However, as I said, there is that option to block the abort for the blocking all the images, and this you can then block anything you want from this. This is something that I want to look at and see if I can actually figure out and get to work properly, so that then becomes less of an issue here. One other thing which you may have seen already is the item scrape count here is 8,387, whereas over here it is a 9,060. This is probably a few products different, and I suspect that this is because the version of the site that we get when we load the browser up differs slightly to what's actually being returned from the standard HTTP request. So we might be seeing slightly different links, might be slightly less. We're also getting less duplicated and filtered. So this is just something to keep in account. But if we look at the request count, I've lost it. I'm making it. Request count, receive count is 1107. Here it was 1186. So there's like 80 odd requests less that we made and we received a response for. Again, I suspect that's probably because of the difference looking at the browser, etc., etc. We have all this other information here that tells you so much. So look, you can tell here the Playwright images that was taken, the images that we downloaded was this many, and this is just going to make it so much easier when we can start to block these, and it will go quicker as well. So all in all, I think this is really quite impressive. For those times that you do need to use a browser, this is definitely what I'll be reaching for. I've been using Scrapy so much more recently because of the fact that, well, once you start to build more complicated scraping programs of your own, you effectively find yourself inevitably rewriting Scrapy in itself, so you might as well just use it, and it's incredibly quick to get going. I mean, if I close this out and go back to my Spider, I mean, all of this was, this is easy to write, and this is hardly any code whatsoever, and this is able to scrape all that data very, very quickly in the case of the standard HTTP requests, and probably quick enough in the case of the Playwright requests, and it gives you access to all these cool things. Anyway, I'm digressing ever so slightly. For me, it's definitely worth using. I will be using this 100% going forward. I've used it quite a lot already, but I will be using 100% going forward if I ever need a browser for anything. And it's easy to drop in to your existing Scrapy projects, as I showed you in this one. So thank you very much for watching. If you've enjoyed this video, here's another one where there's a long Scrapy project that you might be interested in watching to find out more.